Hello, 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 hello. Yesterday was the first time I got to play the new patch. It was sick. And I spent most of it testing out Breachstones. I did 100 Breachstones and it took me around 5.5 hours. And the loot was phenomenal. So why are Breachstones so good in this patch? It's primarily because it got the old quadruple buff. The first buff is that the Twisted Domain now drops significantly more catalysts on average. This is very nice because it drops so many catalysts now that if you just pick up the Ash and the Reaver, it will completely cover the cost of the Breachstones and then a little bit more. So every single Breachstone you run is pure profit. Every single one. Number two, Breach rings dropped from clasped hands in the Twisted Domain are always rare. When I first read that, I thought that was actually going to be a nerf because everyone wants to buy white Breach rings. In fact, it was actually meta to run negative rarity on the first half of the Zesh run, kill the monsters with negative rarity, and then kill Zesh with rarity. But here's the thing, they don't just drop rare, they drop as a guaranteed tiered rare. So that means you are going to be absolutely just dumping out insane Breach rings. I mean, obviously some of these aren't like insane, these are just like pretty good. Like look at this one, triple attribute, this one double rarity, tier 1 attack, tier 1 strength, all res, and tier 1 life. Just a bunch of really good, really solid rings that should sell for a decent amount. And then some really amazing ones here, like double tier 1 attack, tier 1 rarity, with 2 attributes. This one is double tier 1 attack, tier 1 lightning and damage, some resistances, blah, blah, blah. Like these are just insano rings that last patch would have easily sold for like 50 div each without even crafting onto them. I personally am not selling these yet because I'm trying to wait for the whittle prices to go down. What the fuck is going on? Was there a bug there or something? But I'm waiting to whittle these and craft on these for the and sell them for like around 50 to 100 div. This is a huge buff, huge buff to Breachstones. The third buff is that monsters in the Twisted Domain are more rewarding. This is just a general buff, so you get more Breach rings now because of this. And on top of that, I dropped like 2 or 3 tier 0 uniques doing the 100 Breachstones. You were just gonna get so many like diversified good pieces of loot. I was also dropping tiered rares, just like every single run I was getting 1 or 2 of those, right? The same thing with Zesh. They were like, I'd run probably the strictest filter out of anyone I know, and I was getting shit popping up on my filter every single run, like good stuff. And then the fourth thing is increased rare and magic pack chance in the Twisted Domain. This is just more loot like this, but it works multiplicatively. Because if the monsters are more rewarding and then you also get better monsters, it just stacks on top of each other and it's so noticeable. It's actually so noticeable. And then the last buff, so that's 4 buffs straight up to breaches. The last buff are these. These are just generic buffs to mythic unique chances. So now dropping mythic uniques are a lot more common. And guess what? Breachstones shit out loot now. Just all kinds of loot, not just breach rings. Before you just farmed Breachstones for maybe a Hoa drop and then like the white breach rings. But now you can literally drop insane gear. I dropped 3 of the new runes yesterday. I dropped probably 2 mythic uniques. Like it's just overall a fantastic place to farm. It's kind of like Simulacrum where like you don't just go there for the pinnacle unique loot anymore. You go there because you just get everything. These are like the theories for why the Breachstones are a lot better and like what the buffs were to Breachstones. One more thing I want to add before we get into like the div per hour, like the P&L, the analysis on the financials for this is I just want to talk about the gear and the cost for this. Breachstones are so cheap, man. They're like 40x each, 35 if you're a buyer, 38 if you're a seller. They're so cheap to do, and like I said, it's guaranteed profit. Okay, but not only are they cheap to do and is a guaranteed profit, but the gear that you need to run to do breach are so low. So for example, I was doing these tier 4 breaches, right? Tier 4 breaches, because every time you put a point into one of these, you get a higher tier breach. I was doing tier 4. At tier 3, I think you still get eye level 82 items, which is what you need for the rings. But I recommend that you do tier 4. And if you have problems with Zesh, here's the thing. I got 95% of my loot killing the monsters on the way to Zesh, not even touching him. He dropped like pretty much nothing for me, okay? And if you have trouble with Zesh, just skip him or like go and fight him. And if you die, you die. You don't lose experience dying to him. So go fight him. If you can't fight him and you die, who cares? It doesn't matter. Or you can just skip him. But he does have a pretty good drop table in terms of getting tiered rares and also hitting mythic uniques. So I wouldn't recommend skipping him. But if you can't complete him, don't feel bad about that at all. You're getting most of your loot from the rest of the from the rest of the Breachstone, which then makes it so the actual item requirements that you need to go and fight him are incredibly low. I could easily be doing these Breachstones on like 5 div of gear. Not only is the base, like the cost to get into the Breachstone, incredibly low, but the item requirements that you need to actually do these are incredibly low themselves, because you don't actually need to kill Zesh. The last notable thing I want to mention, I ran all of these Breachstones with 143% item rarity. So the way item rarity works in Pinnacle content is that it affects the drops for everything minus the guaranteed unique that you get from the Pinnacle content. So like Arbiter, you know, it drops like 1 guaranteed unique. It can drop the diamond, it can drop the chicken claw, it can drop the warrior, etc. With Zesh, it can drop a bunch of stuff, notably the Hoa and the controlled metamorphosis, and then also like the Choir of Storm, blah, blah, blah. The rarity doesn't affect that, but the rarity does affect the amount of currency that you're getting, quality of your currency. Like I got probably 8 raw div drops during the 100 Breachstones. If I had lower rarity, I would for sure have gotten less. The rarity of the tier of your tiered rare loot. So like for example, the breach rings, the higher rarity you have, the more like tier 5 breach rings you're gonna see versus tier 2. And also it affects the rarity of the uniques you're dropping. So you're gonna be seeing more tier 1, tier 0, like these mythic level uniques. So I would definitely recommend that you boost this number as high as you can. But again, that's just a nice to have. You don't need to be doing this. I think even with 0 rarity, you're still gonna be making a lot of money, which I'll get into in this next section here. The next thing I want to talk about is what the profit is. So I did 100 Breachstones. It took me 5 to 5.5 hours because I was fucking around a lot, talking to chat, like not really paying attention, fixing my filter, that kind of stuff. And the filter I'll link in the description, but it's a very strict filter, but I think it's very, very good for Breachstone. It's probably the best Breachstone filter there is, but again, it's very strict. So if you want to go in and mess around with it, I highly recommend that too. Okay, 100 Breachstones, 5.5 hours, let's just say of time. Like I said, the Reavers, the buffs of Reavers, they make it so it completely offsets the cost of the Breachstones. In fact, it actually now is probably a little bit more profitable. Okay, the raw currency drops, we dropped 200x, and again, I was only picking up x if they were in stacks of 2 or more. We dropped 60c, 4 null, 8d. I mean, this equates to roughly like 12 div, but like again, in all of my calculations for these methods, I always try and go conservative and just assume that I got a little bit lucky, so I always round down. We dropped 1 tier 0 unique, the Kadiro Quiver, the new item. We sold it for 17 div. Could we have sold it for more or less? I'm not really sure. We found 2 unique charms. One was worth 1 div, the other was worth 2 div. We found a Whispering Staff. This is another tier 0 unique, one of the new ones. I think these were worth like 3D, maybe 5D. I just rounded down just to make sure that it was conservative. We found 1 Vision and we found 3 Ray Class. One of them was perfect, which is worth 5 div. So 8 div total here. We found 3 runes. Only one of them was worth 1 div though. The others were worth like maybe 1 div together, but again, to be conservative, we rounded down. Zesh Reliquary Key, 1.5D. These are probably 2D, but again, round down. Hoas, if you sell these unit, you can get them a lot more, I think. But again, we're trying to be really conservative here and expect the price to go down. So we just called these 2D. We dropped 14 of them. And then we found probably 200 or 300 tiered rare rings. And of those 200 or 300, probably like 10, 20 of them were actually worth something. But if you've seen any of my breach ring crafting, you understand that these really rare turbo hit rings, it's like Pareto's principle, where you get 80% of your value from 20% of your rings. It's actually more extreme than that. I would say you get probably 95% of your value from only 5% of your rings. So that's definitely the case here. Most of these rings are like, you know, a few div. Some of them are like definitely worth at least 5 or 10. Like this one, for example, double rarity, decent res, strength, max life, tier 1 cold. I had multiple people offering like 5, 7 div for it without even having it qualityed. These are definitely worth something still. Of course, the price is going to go down because, like I said, Breachstone is now the best way to absolutely shit out insane breach rings without having to craft on them. By the way, I didn't craft on a single one of these. I did not use a single whittle on any of these. I just exalt slammed, okay? So this is where you're getting a lot of your money from. Again, I wanted to be incredibly, incredibly conservative. Like, look at this one. Double tier 1, Fizz, Fire, tier 1 rarity, double attribute. This one, double tier 1 with like max roll lightning, rarity, int, res. The mana can be whittled off as well. This can be crafted on further. Easily, this is worth like 20 div, right? I counted all of these rings as only 30 div to be incredibly conservative. In my opinion, it's worth way more than that, but I want to be, again, incredibly conservative on the calculations, so I don't give you like a 15 div per hour number, and it's actually like 10. Same thing with the Sekima thing. When I was running Sekima, I was making over 30 div an hour, close to 35 div an hour, over 60 runs. The conservative estimate I gave to you guys is 20. With all these together, the total profit is around 75 div, divided by 5.5 div per hour, it equals to like 13.8, which I rounded down to 13, but I was making 14 div an hour doing this. Keep in mind, Every single step of the way, I'm giving you the most conservative estimate. Like round down, round down, round down, round down, round down, turbo round down. I'm giving you the most conservative estimates I possibly can. The reality of the situation is, for me, I was actually probably making 15 to 20 div an hour doing the Breachstones. It's insane. And I didn't even get that lucky. I had so many people I talked to who dropped like Flandre's touches during their Breachstone runs. I actually didn't even get that lucky. This was the profit. It was around 13 div an hour. If you exclude breach rings, I made 8 div an hour. That's kind of crazy. Farming tier 4 Breachstones, I made 8 div an hour, not even including the breach rings, which is why you farm them. Conversely, I was making 5 to 6 div an hour just farming the breach rings. Again, no crafting at all on these breach rings. And again, these are incredibly, incredibly conservative estimates. I did not even fucking quality any of these rings, and I got offers for some of them, okay? Incredibly, incredibly conservative estimates. Breach ring is easily an S tier method right now. I would say there's maybe 2 or 3 things that I'm gonna test today that could be better, but maybe not, because I think rituals might actually be bugged. So this might actually be one of the best, I would say in the top 3 money-making methods in the game. 10 to 15 div an hour with content that you just plug and chug. There's absolutely zero setup required. You buy the Breachstones from Alva, you put them into the fucking Realm Gate, and then you just go. The content is brain dead easy. Like I actually could run the entire thing on a 5 div character, no problem at all, okay? The loot is incredibly rewarding and really fun. It's like you're mapping, but you don't get any loot for like 3 minutes, and then at the end of 3 minutes, you just get a loot explosion. It feels so nice. And then it's one of the highest profit money makers in the game right now. You're making 10 to 15 div an hour conservatively doing breaches. It's nuts. Like, I highly recommend that you guys try it. This is the king, because it's like, if you have a 200 div account, you can run this. If you have a 5 div account, you can run this. This is just like an equalizer for loot. Anyone can run this. So that's kind of my analysis on this. I'm going to test out a few more things today. So if you want more methods, I'm probably going to post something else tonight. And I look forward to showing you guys what I find from my testings. Thanks you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys continue to drop some insano loot from this patch. I know I'm looking forward to that. If this video was helpful, please like, comment, subscribe. 10 likes and I'll get a new barber. But anyways, good luck, boys. 07.